right, Jeff, welcome to Living Off Rentals.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. I'm really excited about this interview. I know you have a pretty deep background in renovating and rehabbing, which obviously is a huge part of real estate investing. And I know you've done a lot of your own deals. And I always tell people that you really make your money on deals right up front when you buy it right, and then you renovate a ton of equity into the properties. It's a great way to make a ton of money right up front. And so, I kind of want to pick your brain today on that aspect and some of the other stuff that you're focused on. So, yeah. So if you don't mind just starting off with a little bit about your background and how you got into real estate investing.
Yeah, absolutely. I come from a construction family, grandparents, father, everybody more on the craftsman side. I was trained as an architect, and shortly after school, I decided I'd go in the military. Joined the Marine Corps, and what I thought would be just a single hitch turned into 21 years as an engineer in the Marine Corps, which, a lot of construction management, mostly advanced engineering. Got to about the 21-year mark, and it was time to move on, and really unsure what to do. Along the way, though, I will tell you, every time we PCS, the wife and I always kind of bought homes, and my weekends and nights would fix them up, holding to build equity in there. And we were in great spots too, California, El Paso, other places. So a lot of good opportunity to learn home renovations by doing it yourself and get a good sense of what time and things cost. Shortly after retirement, I worked for a couple kind of big defense contractors, and it just wasn't the life for me. I was just like, this can't be how I end up 9 to 5, watching that clock, being here because it's not 5. And so I very frustrated, and my wife, who's a real estate agent, by the way, just kind of goes, well, why don't you start flipping houses? And it was such an offhand comment that I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I know how to do all that. What's the big deal? And immediately started looking for properties to do that, and was doing both at the same time, my job and as well as trying to flip homes.
And when did that start? What year?
That was right after retirement, so that would have been 2014.
Okay.
So I had a bunch of big successes right off the bat. I was everything. I was the financier. I was the construction manager. I was the estimator. And I think the first year or two, I did probably about 16 deals altogether. So it was a madhouse there for a while, but I was really enjoying it. I really got into the design piece of it.
Okay. And were those like pretty big projects, like gut rehabs, or mostly?
Yeah, they were something you wouldn't want to even go into. Hoarding situations. I mean, just the worst that you could find, and the market was so competitive for flips. Everybody, it seemed like at the time, was getting into flips, and so finding the worst ones that were very technically challenging, you had less competition, and you also had the most opportunity for equity. Because you would find these things at 50 to 40% below what the potential market value was. And so a lot of room to make mistakes, as well as a lot of room to profit from.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Kirby, shut me down when you need to interject. But so along in there, I was getting very frustrated with my contractors. I always felt held hostage by scope and craftsmen and quality and costs. And so again, the wife steps in and goes, well, why don't you just buy a construction company? I'm like, yeah,
that's easy.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
And so started on the hunt for a residential construction company that was for sale. About a 2-year process to do that. Be careful what you ask for. I eventually found one and purchased it, and it rapidly consumed that part of my life, because running a business, advice, just flipping homes was very different that I didn't anticipate. So it's been very rewarding. It's had a lot of challenges, and it is taking me away from focusing on investment properties, as I have now clients that demand, my time and energies to their projects.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to, I want to continue down the road of your story, but I also don't want to gloss over that point, because I think it's a great point for people to understand. So what are some of the main differences between, running, just flipping properties and then running an actual construction business?
Absolutely. You have people that you're responsible for. I have a construction company now. I have payroll I have to deal with. I have insurance I have to deal with. I have a fleet of vehicles that I need to manage now. You also have salesmen that work for you. I have 2 salesmen that work for me, and really starting to, and this was an area I was really weak in, was the marketing aspect. And you will be bombarded with people that want to sell you some new gizmo marketing, and it is just endless. And you sifting through there and wanting to do the right thing, it is a huge learning curve. It was for me anyway. So human resources, financing, understanding construction, and understanding your financials was a huge learning curve for me, and really consumed my time in understanding that piece. And it takes you away from what you thought you would be mostly focusing on was, hey, we're going to design beautiful homes, we're going to design project schedules, and the ops of it all really become second to everything else sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, what I've noticed, because I share a similar story in flipping houses. We kind of along the same timeline, actually. We started flipping houses and then realized the market was really competitive. And so, you exactly as you said, you search for the ones that are more challenging, that the novice flipper doesn't have the ability to do or isn't willing to do. And there's more opportunity there. But it also presents new problems, because when you take on, it's like night and day difference when you're taking on these massive gut rehabs, or turning a 1-story into a 2-story in a lot of cases to add more value. And so then it presents this new challenge then with the contractors, which exactly what I had too. Like, it's finding the great contractors was a real challenge. And so it seems to me like that's always like in this business, it evolves based on the problems that you're trying to solve. And so I think it's a good point that you're making, that you got to think through the solution, all the implications of the solution, because the solution to the contractors then was to start a construction company. And then that brought all these new issues that you maybe didn't fully anticipate. But so not that that's bad, but I think everyone needs to know themselves and know their DNA, like as Gary Vaynerchuk says, and understand how the solution is going to play into their life and what they're good at. So I think it's a great point you made.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing yourself, knowing your weaknesses, and humility to admit to them is I think essential to be successful, especially in this business, because a $200,000 renovation probably has about 300 to 400 steps and 600 minor and large decisions you have to make, all in chronological order. And if you don't do that, you quickly turn into operations whack-a-mole to fill in the second and third order effects you didn't think about or what the effective. So totally agree. Great.
Yeah, great point. So you started that business, and that's grown over the last couple of years. So what does that look like now? You said you're taking on work from other clients as well as your own projects?
Yeah. So the project, the real estate investing has slowed down quite a bit. I just have not had the energy and the time to do that. So that has slowed down to 4 deals a year, usually pretty large deals, construction efforts. I put my own company on it. So my real estate company investment company buys the property and then contracts with my construction company to do the work. Keeps the accounting nice and clean, and I have a whole staff to manage the process for us. Simultaneously, the construction company, the renovation company, remodeling company also has very large contracts that we do. We're a full service, remodeler. So we have a small projects division, which is handyman type of things, all the way up to $500,000 renovations. So anything beyond that, I'm just not capable of doing, but hope to one day. But those are very time consuming. And so that's what the two pieces look like. One is taking more of a precedent in my life, is now you have people you're responsible to take care of and ensure they have work coming in. And the house flipping, when I really enjoyed it, it takes a backseat to some degree because of that. I do hope to go back to flipping because in large numbers, it just takes time.
Yeah. I recently did a video on our YouTube channel about this idea of having an active income source that complements your passive investments and really supercharges your return. So, this could be like wholesaling or property management or realty or renovating, it's just a way to make income that you can live on while, like you said, like your investment business can buy these deals and you've got a built-in construction company then that's making, income from other jobs and servicing other clients. But then also, obviously, your projects are going to be much better than they would have been had you not owned this construction company. So I love how you set this up, and I think it's a good lesson for people.
Yeah.
So what's your plan going forward then? Are you planning? So you said you want to do some more flip property or some flip projects, but it's hard to believe that a year ago, most people didn't even know what COVID was at this point. Yes. But COVID is totally changed our lives. From so far, it's helped the real estate market. It has an impact. It hasn't impacted it negatively anyway, up till this point. Who knows what it'll do in the future? Yeah. So are you thinking about that? Like, as you look forward, how are you setting up your business? And what are the projects that you're thinking about for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So a big piece that we're thinking about is we're seeing a lot more folks obviously living and working from home and needing dedicated space in their homes. A lot of the homes, we have the oldest housing, real estate housing in the nation along the eastern coast. So, and we also have some of the toughest environmental pieces. So building new homes is very much a challenge in and around where we live. Well, that's fantastic because that means people want to renovate and expand their homes as much as they can. And when you pile, in my opinion, when you pile the unknowns or the realities of what COVID has forced us all to work from home more, that just creates opportunity for us. So we've really started planning on how we do move to a design build model for renovations. How can we quicken the pace of construction by not going through the historical, go to an architect, go to a designer, get those drawings done, then go find a contractor to bid it and fill out all the details on selections and finishes, et cetera, and then build it. Even a small 500 square foot addition, that could be a 6 to 9 month proposition. So if we can pull all that in house, we can really accelerate things and really offer a value to our clients on the renovation side. On the investment side, we're really starting to kind of get aggressive. My wife and I kind of do this as a team. She's a real estate agent, and we also own a property management company as well. And we are in your
spare time.
Say that again.
The property management company in your spare time?
Yeah, in our spare time. Actually, it's a funny story. My daughter actually runs it for us now.
Oh, nice.
So keep it all in the family.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's back to the second, third order effects. So be careful what you ask for sometimes. But I lost my train of thought for a second. But we're really, because of the demand for housing and because of the low amount of inventory, we are really starting to look hard at some buying and flipping homes, even pushing out to beyond where the normal areas that we would do, we would look at, because folks are really willing to, since they're not having to drive 5 hours anymore to get to work. They're starting to think about, hey, these little towns that are in and around the DC metro area where we are, and that opens opportunities for us. I think it's just finding the right deals. Something you said at the very beginning: the money's made on the buy; it's not made on the sell. So that's the tough piece for us. But that's what we're looking at.
Okay, yeah, a couple points you made in there, which I think are good takeaways for people. That timeline that you mentioned was such a crucial learning point for me when I was getting started, and I mean, that just, it either crushes a deal or it makes the deal. I mean, when you look at, especially if you're borrowing hard money, at high interest rates, that you add up how much it's costing you daily, just in the interest and the utilities and the taxes and and also people don't consider when you own a property, there's always somebody who wants money, for the days you own that property. Somebody wants to get paid to be doing something, whether they're providing a service or, they're the government and just want their cut. So, it just eats you alive, that time. So I love that idea of bringing it in-house and expediting, because it's a lot of times it's the bureaucratic part of it that really kills the project, not necessarily the construction. The other thing that I'm really interested in is how you work with your wife and your daughter on these businesses. So how do they complement each other? I know you set them up at different times, and it's kind of evolved over the years, but how do you guys work that?
It's a family dynamic thing. Obviously, there's probably, let me back up. So my wife has a real estate team that she has. How she plays into this is helping us find the properties. We have constant runs. We stumble across opportunities all the time because of her connections and friends that she has in the business that know that I do that. And so we get fed a lot of opportunities that way. At the same time, the property management piece is very interesting. It's just something that we fell into as doing a favor for military families that PCS through the area. Obviously the DC area has a ton of military folks, and the way it kind of worked out was, Sarah sells them a house as they PCS through. We understood, because we were military, the travel, the permanent change of station challenges that military families have, and Sarah really bit into that niche. And so making great friends with them and keeping a relationship alive. Hey, we guys manage our house while we're gone. Okay, sure, we can do that. And Jeff has a construction company that if anything happens, we can take care of the maintenance on it. Perfect. All right, we can do that. Well, that quickly, turned into, 36 houses over a couple of years, and me becoming overwhelmed because, Sarah's a classic salesperson. She sells and she's worried about everybody, but all those details, Jeff's got to take care of. And so, quickly, my daughter, who also has an architecture degree and was working commercial property management, I'm like, hey, Jillian, are you interested in being the operations person for this thing? And she was, and it was great to pull her in on the family and have her run that. Another big learning curve for her, accounting wise, and coordinating with people and getting people to do things, when they're not necessarily ready to do them. Dealing with difficult tenants and owners, demanding ones sometimes, and learning that that's just because they're having a bad day doesn't make it personal for you. But so that's how we all kind of work together. When I on the investment piece, when we buy a home, most of the time, there's some of the times I get a lot of the deals from wholesalers, but it works out great because then I filter right to our real estate side to sell it for us. So keep it all in house that way.
Yeah, I was curious about that, like how that, where you were sourcing the deals from now with your wife being a realtor. Is she finding stuff on the MLS? But you mentioned it's wholesalers. So are most of them coming from wholesalers, or are you still able to find some stuff on the MLS?
I'm still able to find some things on the MLS. Those guys are usually just train wrecks.
Yeah.
The wholesaling ones tend to be the predominance of the ones that I pick up, just because, but they're not the most valuable ones. The ones that for whatever reason, are the ones that we have just picked up off of pre-MLS or on the MLS that were just train wrecks, for whatever reason, sunken basements, a small pond in the basement, or, collapsed roofs for whatever reason. But
yeah. That's what I found too. Like my search parameters on the MLS, usually it's like at least I'm searching for stuff that's been on the MLS for at least 60 days. And in this environment, that means that it's probably been looked at by about 1 million investors. And so the reason it's still on the MLS is because there is some massive issue that nobody wants to touch. So, but typically by then the owner is pretty interested in negotiating, and will they've had some realizations around what they're asking. So I think that's can still be a resource. I think it's tough to compete when they first hit the market. That's the challenge. But looking back at your evolution of real estate investing and construction and some of the deals that you've done, are there one or two lessons that kind of stand out from maybe a deal that went really great or one that was a learning opportunity for you?
The couple lessons is really get to know your contractors before you enter into a deal with them. Do every single background check, investigation, license check, call people that they have worked for, ask them for like, hey, tell me what your worst job was. And because I want to talk to that person about you. But learn as much as you can about them. Really understanding finance and understanding that the deal, the money is made on the buy. It is not made on the sell. And along that, don't get enamored with making it a dream home. Make it a clean, fresh home that 90% of the population is going to want. Nobody cares that you bought some French chandelier and put it in the dining room at an exorbitant cost, because most people are not going to appreciate it, nor are they going to be willing to buy it. The market dictates what that home's worth. Stick to that. I have fallen in love with design and gone overboard with the design piece, and only for very little return, if any, for that work.
Yeah.
So those would be my big ones.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I just kind of put my foot in my mouth the other day because we're designing our house. We bought a old farm and we're renovating it. My wife is our designer. I mean, she is very talented when it comes to design. And she was showing me samples, and she's like, do you like this green? We're talking about doing wallpaper on the risers of the stairs. It's like kind of a cool trend that people are doing. And so she ordered all these samples of wallpaper, and she's like, which one of these green samples do you like? And like the difference between them was like a millimeter of different. I mean, if you were to measure it, like the human eye almost couldn't tell the difference. And so I was like, what does it matter? Like, as a flipper, I'm like, let's pick the most neutral thing and just go with it, But I think people who are used to doing their own homes, can get really into, and to her there was a massive difference, and it was really the wrong thing to say, because she didn't take it so well when I said, what does it matter? Like, it's not going to change our lives in any way. Just pick one. So yeah, it's a good point. Like as an investor, you're totally different than a homeowner in terms of your choices there. So I want to back up too to what you said about contractors. So you mentioned screening them really well up front, which I think is such a great idea and great point. Are there a few telltale signs that you're looking for, or something, when you're talking to people they've worked for in the past, or just during the interview process, that you've learned over the years are maybe a good sign or a bad sign?
This is going to sound horrible. When they pull up in their vehicle, I really will assess them initial impressions on how clean that vehicle is. It tells me right away, is their dash filled with papers and invoices and crap, and so that's one of the first telltale signs of how organized this is. This is an organization business. And if your contractor just grew up and ended up being a roofer because he had nothing else to do and then decided to make a business out of it, and he's incredibly disorganized, that's how your job's going to run. So that's one of the things I look for. I'll start asking deeper questions. Can you provide me one of your past schedules on how you schedule your work, or walk me through how you plan and execute it, a roofing job or a framing job, just in general. Anybody that's familiar with the construction process will tell right away whether he thinks through all those things, and can give you a narrative on how he does it. Payment, money payments, I very rarely ever give deposits. I just do not do it. In this business, you pay for work that you perform. If they need money to buy materials, they're just starting out, then I'll procure the materials for them. But I won't give them money if I don't have a history with them to just, let me give you this deposit. The guys will take your money and potentially you'll never see them again. So I think those are the big things that, the initial impressions, a history, and then the last piece of, their narrative about how well or how they plan to execute my work.
Yeah, I fully agree. Great points. When you look back, is there anything that you would change in terms of decisions that you made, or the way you've grown your business over the years that maybe would have led to success quicker, or would have maybe led to less stress along the way?
Hindsight's, obviously 2020.
Yeah.
I think I would have been a lot more bolder about buying multi-family properties much earlier. I think I would have done that more aggressively, or pursued that more aggressively. Back to our El Paso comment, it just, when I saw your last week's podcast or listened to it, it just reminded me of this amazing, worn down complex that was over by the hospital. And I think it was like 20 units. And I can't tell you how much time I spent running the numbers going, I'm missing something here. And then talking myself out of it, honestly, Yeah. And so that's probably a regret, is run the numbers, be confident in your numbers, pull the trigger, but know your numbers and pull the trigger. I think that's probably a good one that sticks in my mind as a regret. Yeah.
That's Andrew mentioned on that podcast that was where he bought, is right by the hospital, as a multifamily, and he called it the gift that keeps on giving.
He probably bought the one I passed up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he probably owes you some money for passing that up. I'd reach out. No, and it's a great point. You can't learn, just from a book. You got to read the books too to learn the concepts, but you're only going to learn if you jump in and start to do it. Not that you should jump into something that's like maybe a full gut rehab right on the first one, but jump into something to get your feet wet, to start learning that process of how things work. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. Well, this is great. I mean, so much good advice in here for people. So many great takeaways. Is there any parting shots or parting advice that you would give if you could go back and talk to? I mean, I know you said you'd start in commercial properties a little bit earlier, but is there anything else that you'd offer up?
The only thing I'd probably offer up for somebody that doesn't have a construction background is buy some key books and learn as much about as you possibly can about the process. It's just not good enough for you to, hey, the house is being sold for $50. I can sell it for $125 is what my real estate agent says. You really, if you're going to do this business, you really need to have a firm grasp of the phases of construction. And there's some great books out there just to purchase and see the process. Even when your contractors are talking to you, knowing the difference between a joist and a 2x4 is important. And I feel a lot of the investment folks that get into this business are woefully unprepared for that. So I think learning as much about how to build as you possibly can is important. I would have spent a whole lot more time on understanding financing as well. There's private capital, there's hard money, but you really need to understand, and I didn't always appreciate this as well, as like, what is the daily cost that money is costing you, and figuring that into your plan. Back to the 9-month design, bid, build process, that 3 months of design time could cost you everything you thought you were going to make. Yeah. And that can be a real negative. It can really challenge your confidence to do the next one. How do I get beyond that? So those would be my big two. You need to understand the construction process and the terms, the vocabulary, and I would spend more time on the financing piece. Yeah.
And are there any sources that you know of? I sometimes hate getting asked this question of like, what books should I read? Because I can never think of them then when I'm asked that. But are there any that stand out in your mind as ones you'd recommend for someone who's new?
Yeah, I do. The great book is this one right here. Renovation Fit. Okay. It is a great book. It covers everything, in graphics and with a good narrative about how things and houses are built. It's a textbook, and so it reads a bit like a textbook. But I think it's a great, for the average home renovation that you're going to do, it covers just about every topic. So, for instance, if your contractor says you need a brand new concrete CMU foundation footer, well, you can open that thing up and read and go, okay, I understand why he has to do this and what's going on. I think that's a great book. I buy it for all my operations folks and my carpenters, because even them, they need to learn what's going on. As far as running it as a business, there's bazillions of books out there how to run a flipping business. One book that I ran across that I really enjoyed and it made it fun was a book by Jack Stack, and it's called The Great Game of Business. And I think it makes it a lot more entertaining and fun if we look at this as, this is going to sound bad, as a big Monopoly game. Yeah. And you have to play the game. You need to know the rules. But if you play the game and you look at it that way, in a non-emotional way, I think it makes it a lot more fun and challenging, because it is about strategy, and it is about making the right decisions at the right time. Yeah.
Yeah, and probably lower stress too, because you're looking at the bigger picture, the strategic picture, as opposed to like all the little things that can go wrong on a day-to-day basis.
You alive daily. Oh,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I noticed that about construction too. Like, you don't have to, like, I wish I would have spent more time up front to learn. I wish I would have known about that book right up front, because it would have saved me a lot of headaches. But you don't have to know how to do everything. So don't take it as like, you got to go out and like, practice building houses. You just have to because I'm pretty bad at, swinging a hammer, but I've learned over the years the concepts, and I've learned ask the right questions as you're walking through a project, and how to set up a correct payment schedule and a scope of work, and the timeline and all that stuff that really is going to be what keeps you safe, so that your contractors can do the work, and you don't end up in a bad spot. So great point.
Agreed.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way if they want to either work with you on a project if they're out in your area, or have some other question?
Yeah, they can reach out to me directly on my email. It's Jeff. I can give it to you here. It's jeff@hpihomepros.com. They can call me directly, my cell or my office number. Office number's 410-757-2658. You'll be greeted by my office manager, Sarah, we call her the church lady because she's just crazy sweet, and she's the church lady. So that's the best way, either way. And be glad to help anybody that on your podcast that's struggling with how to write a statement of work, or how they manage their work through software systems, whatever. Happy to just email me, and be glad to tell them what I know.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's a good point too. It makes me curious. What software do you use after all your experience to manage a project?
Well, my construction company uses CoConstruct to manage. We can build all of our estimates. We can manage. Has a pretty decent CRM in it. We build our estimates in there. We build our schedule, our invoicing, our purchase orders is all built into that. There's a couple software programs out there that I can't remember off the top of my head, but for just starting out, find one of the ones that are web-based, that are very simple, and pretty much set up the investment property process for you. Yeah. From the estimating to scheduling to all your purchases, et cetera. They even have, some of them even have the built-in analysis for it to help you understand if it's a good buy or not. So there's some good ones out there, especially if you're only doing 1 to 5 deals a year. So
awesome. That's great.
That's it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you very much. This has been super helpful. A lot of great advice in here, some great resources. There's more resources too. I've got at livingoffrentals.com/resources. There's some other resources that if you're just starting out, could potentially help you, run some numbers and sort of organize your thoughts. So check that out. Jeff's website is HPI Home Pros, so you can go there and see what they're doing and some of the examples of some of the other projects. Jeff, I really just appreciate you taking the time today and providing this advice for people.
Absolutely enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Kirby. Really did enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care.
Take care.